I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Hey Arnold is a fantastic cartoon. I might even say it's one of the most underrated Nicktoons of all time. One thing I love about this show is how it will tackle many serious subjects, whether it be in a very subtle way or in a very blatant and straight up way. Whether it's the subtle implication that Helga's mother is an alcoholic who suffers with severe depression, or the ostracization of people such as Monkey Man or Pigeon Man for not fitting into the societal norm, it's clear that Hey Arnold is no stranger to serious topics. I've talked about Hey Arnold before in my video showing the top 5 episodes that taught us important life lessons, but I really feel like visiting Hey Arnold again for another video, so here we are. Today we're looking at the top 5 episodes of Hey Arnold that hit us right in the feels. Just gotta say, if you watch this video and you find yourself thinking, oh well, what about the Christmas episode with Mr. Wynn's daughter, or oh, what about the Pigeon Man episode? Well,
I can explain.
I covered those episodes and many more in previous videos. I'll link those videos in the description box down below if you want to check them out. If you feel like an important episode was missed, check out those videos because maybe I've already covered it and you're missing out on an awesome video. Also, I just wanted to say thank you very much to all my subscribers. I took a little break from YouTube for personal reasons, and while I was gone, I gained over 50 subscribers, which is just crazy. It might not seem like much, but to me, it's a huge deal because I actually haven't told any friends or family about my YouTube channel, which means that all of my subscribers are random people out there on the internet who find my content interesting, and that means the world to me. If you're subscribed to my channel, thank you so much. If you're new here, then please subscribe so you don't miss any of my new videos, and make sure you drop a like and leave a comment because it helps me a whole bunch. Without further ado, let's get right into the video. Number 5. Chocolate Boy. Most of the episodes I'm going to cover follow a relatively similar theme, so I figured I'd start with an episode that has a separate theme all of its own. The eponymous character that episode mainly follows is Chocolate Boy. The episode begins with recess at PS 118. We see kids playing and talking together, then we pan to Chocolate Boy, who's sitting on the ground obsessively licking chocolate wrappers. Wolfgang and Edmund are in the background laughing at him and comparing his desperation to that of a hungry dog. Then they approach him and make him jump up and down and act like a dog in exchange for a chocolate bar, all for their amusement. Edmund gets the idea for Wolfgang to tell Chocolate Boy that he has a 10-pound bag of chocolate at home and that he'll give it to Chocolate Boy if he can go 2 whole weeks without eating any chocolate. Just the thought of it starts driving Chocolate Boy mad. But he ends up agreeing to it, and Wolfgang ends up telling one of his fellow 5th graders, Mickey, to follow Chocolate Boy and make sure he doesn't eat any chocolate at all for the whole 2 weeks. Licking chocolate off of wrappers, obsessing over chocolate, and being willing to do any demeaning act in order to get his next fix for chocolate. If you haven't made the obvious connection yet, Chocolate Boy's mannerisms and tendencies are very similar to that of a drug addict. Chocolate Boy ends up coming to Arnold for help, getting clean from chocolate for 2 weeks. Everyone tells Arnold that'll be impossible, regardless of Arnold's long-standing track record for helping people. But Arnold doesn't shy away from the task. He decides to help Chocolate Boy finally kick his chocolate obsession, which is no easy task. They start by clearing all of the chocolate that Chocolate Boy has stashed all around his bedroom. The next day, we see Chocolate Boy in class with his eyes beet red, shaking and muttering about chocolate, kinda similar to withdrawals that a drug addict would face after finally trying to get clean. The bell rings, and he sprints out of class and right up to the vending machine where he's talking to the chocolate in the machine. At one point, Chocolate Boy ends up in the corner of a hallway at school, sitting down. Arnold comes up to check on him, and Chocolate Boy falls asleep, clearly suffering side effects from going a few days without chocolate. Days later, Chocolate Boy ends up starting to behave differently, hiding under a table at lunch while holding a glass of water and what seems to be a G.I. Joe. At 10 days clean, things start to get really bizarre for Chocolate Boy.
Look at these ants. They're so happy in a line. Little ants in a line. Little chocolate ants in a little chocolate line.
Willikers! He's looking ants!
Then finally, 2 weeks is up, and Chocolate Boy ends up outside of school waiting obsessively for Wolfgang to show up. When Wolfgang finally shows up, he gives Chocolate Boy the 10-pound bag of chocolate, and Arnold is absolutely let down. Arnold gets disappointed because he thought Chocolate Boy really wanted to get off of chocolate for good. Presumably, later that day, we see Chocolate Boy finish that 10-pound bag of chocolate. Wolfgang and a bunch of 5th graders approach and call Chocolate Boy pathetic for begging for more chocolate. They make Chocolate Boy do a dance while they throw chocolate at him, which is very traumatizing for Chocolate Boy. Later on, we see this scene occur. Which ends up being a massive wake-up call for Chocolate Boy. He comes back to Arnold, begging for his help to finally drop chocolate once and for all. Arnold shows him a shocking video about what chocolate can do to you. He takes Chocolate Boy into a sauna to sweat out all the chocolate from his system, and he even tries to introduce Chocolate Boy to a chocolate substitute, but none of that seems to work. Then, Arnold gets the idea to really get to the root of the problem. He tries to use a watch to perform hypnotherapy on Chocolate Boy, with the goal of finding out where his obsession with chocolate comes from. We learned that when Chocolate Boy was little, he had a nanny that loved him dearly, and she took really good care of him. She would feed him chocolate every so often as a special treat. But one day, he came home and found out that his nanny was leaving and she had to move away, which really scarred Chocolate Boy. He loved his nanny and misses her dearly. As a result, he's trying to fill the void she left behind with chocolate, and Arnold helps him realize that doing that is not a healthy coping mechanism. Chocolate Boy realizes that if his nanny saw him digging through dumpsters for chocolate and dancing for it, she really wouldn't be proud, which finally sets him free.
You don't need chocolate.
I don't eat chocolate.
You're free.
I'm free! I'm free! Free of chocolate! Haha, yeah! I'm free! No more chocolate!
By the end of the episode, Chocolate Boy ends up surprising everyone and thanking Arnold for finally helping him kick his habit. We learn that he's picked up a new obsession: radishes. It's nice that the episode ends on a positive note, with Chocolate Boy's success in leaving behind his addiction with the help of Arnold, even if he did just replace one unhealthy addiction with one more healthy addiction. Number 4. Miss Perfect. This episode introduces Lila as a new kid in class. It's her first day at school after living out in the country for her entire life. She's new to city life and really just wants to fit in. Helga and the other girls give her this whole convoluted spiel about how she needs to learn from them to fit in and make friends, which Helga says will take 2 years or 1 if she's lucky. Almost immediately, some other kids come up and invite Lila to play kickball with them, which is an absolutely blatant display of how Helga and her friends have no idea what they're talking about. Lila ends up unintentionally stepping on the other girls' toes. She answers a question in class that Phoebe wanted to answer, she impresses the 6th grade girls with her outfit when Rhonda was trying to impress them, and she disregards Helga's instructions to not be kind to the lunch ladies, which really just pisses Helga off.
Look at her. She's here 2 days and it's like she runs the place.
Who does she think she is anyway?
Little Miss Perfect.
After seeing all of the boys in school fawning over Lila, they decide to plot an evil scheme to mess with her.
Don't worry, we'll fix her wagon. By the time we get through with her, she won't be Little Miss Perfect no more. Okay, so we're gonna...
They start by filling her locker with 16 pounds of kiwi jello, but at last second, Mr. Simmons comes up and tells Lila that she's getting assigned to a new locker. Her old locker gets assigned to Patty, who ends up getting covered in the jello and subsequently beats the living snot out of Helga. Next, the girls replace Lila's lunch with fake meat, wax fruit, and pickle juice. Lila, who is friends with Patty, decides to trade lunch with her. Naturally, this plan also leads to Helga getting the snot beaten out of her again. Finally, they concoct a really nasty plan that leads to Lila getting covered in what seems to be muck and fish remains. Lila, being humiliated and laughed at by everyone in school, ends up running out of the lunchroom crying. The next thing we see is when the episode starts to take a more serious tone. The scene cuts to a not-so-clean looking, tattered building with trash all over the ground outside and part of the fence falling down. We then see Lila inside, sitting at a small table with folding chairs alongside her dad. They're eating meat substitute right out of the can for dinner in a room that's lit by one single hanging light bulb, has cobwebs in the cupboards, and the bathroom in the background is absolutely filthy. This is the sad moment where we get a glimpse into the actual home life of Lila.
Well, you sure are quiet tonight. Something wrong?
No, Daddy, I'm okay.
The next day at school, Helga and the other girls are talking bad about Lila when Mr. Simmons walks in and informs the class that Lila won't be coming to school today for personal reasons, and asks for a volunteer to bring Lila her homework. Helga is quick to volunteer, and next we see Helga and the other girls heading over to Lila's house. They're quick to mention how the neighborhood and Lila's house is a dump.
What a dump.
I assumed Miss Perfect would live in a more luxurious domicile.
Lila's dad invites Helga in, who doesn't even seem to pay any mind to how rough the living conditions are. Helga walks out and immediately starts talking bad about Lila to the other girls when they hear crying through the window. They all stand on some garbage cans to get a better view of what's going on. They overhear Lila venting to her dad about how mean the girls at school are and how she just wants to be friends and fit in with everyone. All the meanwhile, Lila's dad gets a call about a job he applied for, being informed that he didn't get the job.
Don't worry about dinner, Daddy. We've still got 1 can of beans left in the fridge.
No, we don't. I ate them for lunch.
There, Daddy.
After seeing the struggle that Lila and her dad are going through, the girls all feel awful for how they treated Lila. They realize that they treated her really unfairly when all she wanted was to be friends with them. They end up going inside of her house and making a truly heartfelt apology to Lila.
Our actions were petty and most likely motivated by deep-seated insecurities within ourselves.
The scene ends with all the girls gathering for a group hug, and at that exact moment, Lila's dad gets another call about that same job he applied for, and turns out the hiring manager had changed his mind and decides to give Lila's dad the job. The episode ends with everything going back to normal at school. Lila telling all the boys a story, all the boys fawning over her, except this time the girls, instead of talking bad about Lila, decide to talk about how much they like her instead. If there's anything we can take from this episode, it's that obviously bullying is terrible and toxic, and that you shouldn't be so quick to judge someone because you never know what kind of struggle they're facing in their private life. Number 3. Parents' Day. This episode begins with 2 people running through an island jungle, being chased by the island's indigenous people. They escape Indiana Jones style and fly off into the sunset in their plane. Those 2 people are Arnold's parents, and Arnold's grandpa is telling him a bedtime story about how they were able to obtain a serum for a deadly sickness from the forbidden jungle. The next day at school, Mr. Simmons is reminding everyone about the Parents' Day celebration coming up, where each family is going to compete for a trophy. Understandably, Arnold seems relatively upset about this.
Yeah, I don't think I want to go, though.
Huh? Why not?
Everyone's gonna be there with their parents, and I've just got my grandparents.
Arnold gets home and his grandparents are busy training for Parents' Day, which seems to reinforce how much he is dreading that day. I'm sure I speak for everyone when I say that I really feel for Arnold in this scene because he really misses his parents. He even ends up skipping his nightly story because he's so upset. The next day, the Parents' Day tournament begins, and there's a large amount of tension between Arnold's family and Helga's family, stemming from the men of each family.
We gotta beat these characters? Oh, the trophy's practically ours.
See this? You're gonna be looking at it crossing the finish line, Pataki.
The competition ensues, and by the final event of day 1, Helga's family is in first place, and we get a glimpse of just how much of a sore loser Big Bob Pataki is.
Listen, I have taken time off from my busy schedule running a beeper empire to show up here today, so I deserve to win that Best Parent trophy. Losing it is unacceptable.
Dad, this just in. We're ahead!
During the final event of the day, which is an egg toss relay race, Helga's family ends up getting out before Arnold's family does, which prompts Big Bob to go on a yelling tirade at his daughter, and Big Bob says this specific line that, even when I was a child, absolutely made my blood boil.
We are not gonna let some orphan boy and his ancestors win this Parents' Weekend thing. You understand?
Dad!
Which completely hits Arnold right where it hurts and causes him to get eliminated from the egg toss. Helga, simply just to clear her guilty conscience, makes the saddest attempt at a backhanded apology that I've ever heard, literally calling Arnold an orphan and telling him he's all alone in the world in the process. That night at dinner, Arnold ends up confessing to his grandparents that he doesn't feel comfortable at Parents' Day and that as much as he loves them, they aren't his real parents. In a state of sadness, Arnold goes to his room to go to bed. The interaction between Arnold's grandparents that follows is enough to bring a tear to my eye.
Well, now what, Pookie?
You better go talk to him, Phil.
I don't know. Somehow I don't think another bedtime story about his parents is gonna fix this.
He needs you, Phil. You better go talk to him anyway.
Okay, wish me luck.
The love that they both have for Arnold is so true and pure, and they're really faced with a hard situation where there isn't really much that they can do to ease the pain that Arnold feels. That night, Arnold's grandpa tells him the story of how his parents met and fell in love, which leads to Arnold asking about what happened to his parents and where they are now. His grandpa tells him about how one day his dad's old friend Eduardo came to visit and begged Arnold's parents to help him find a serum for a disease that's eradicating an entire village of people in his home country. They left Arnold with his grandparents and were supposed to be gone for only a week.
Won't be gone long, I promise. You be a good boy for Grandpa and Grandma, okay?
We'll be back next week, little buddy. Then I'll take you to the park.
Mommy loves you so much.
Daddy loves you, Arnold.
Bye, Mommy. Bye, Daddy.
Arnold's parents loaded up their plane and flew off for one last time, and sadly, they never came back, and their plane was never found. That night, Arnold has a dream of a memory from when he was really little. He remembers crawling through the house in the middle of the night crying, scared because he can't find his mom and dad. His grandpa comes out and comforts him.
What you doing out of bed, short man?
I'm scared I can't find my mommy and daddy.
Oh, now don't cry, you poor little fella. Hey, how about I tell you a warm, mythical bedtime story tonight? Yeah, that's the ticket. Did I ever tell you about the time your mom and dad worked for a midget circus in Peking?
No, tell me the story.
Oh, why? They're natural-born acrobats, your mom and dad.
This was the night where Grandpa first started his routine, telling Arnold stories about his parents every night. He also dreams of all the great memories he's had of growing up with his grandparents. Arnold wakes up in a better headspace, and he decides that he does want to go to Parents' Day again, realizing how lucky he is to have such great grandparents looking out for him. That day, the events culminate when it comes down to Arnold's family versus Helga's family in a triathlon, which results in a 1v1 battle over a giant bowl of Jell-O between Grandpa Phil and Big Bob Pataki. In the end, Phil kicks Big Bob's ass and sends him down into the Jell-O. Phoebe's family ends up winning the entire competition for best overall score over the 2 days, but what really matters is that Big Bob didn't win the trophy. The episode ends with Arnold going to bed that night and dreaming that he's getting on an airplane and flying off into the sunset, presumably to find his parents. I feel like this was some heavy foreshadowing for what the creator of the show had planned for later on in the show. All in all, there's a lot one could take from this episode, but one of the biggest sentiments I took was to be thankful for the loved ones that you have in your life. Number 2. Helga on the Couch. Grab some tissues and get ready for a good cry because this episode really has a way of tugging at your heartstrings. This episode begins with a child psychologist, Dr. Bliss, being assigned to PS-118 to more or less check on the mental state of all the children who attend the school. Principal Wart seems sure that PS-118 is the school best known for picture-perfect mental health, and he is sure that she won't find anything out of the ordinary there. As soon as she walks out of his office, she sees Helga, who's blatantly walking down the hallway, bullying everyone in her path, which gets the immediate attention of Dr. Bliss. She decides to sit in on Helga's class, where she takes notice of all the noteworthy behaviors that Helga is exhibiting. Finally, Dr. Bliss witnesses Helga punching Brainy in the face, as she usually does, which results in her being sent to the principal's office.
Brainy? He doesn't mind. I do it all the time. What? You'd suck him too if he was standing there behind you breathing.
Breathing?
Yes, breathing.
The result is Dr. Bliss scheduling for Helga to come to her office after school every Tuesday and Thursday to discuss her antisocial tendencies and uncover the true emotions that she may be hiding. Helga's big concern in that moment is Dr. Bliss uncovering the fact that she has a crush on Arnold, but as we will see, Dr. Bliss ends up uncovering a lot more than that. That night, Helga's parents end up having a rather alarming conversation with her about how she shouldn't blab anything to Dr. Bliss because things are meant to be swept under the rug, and how this would have never happened to Olga, Helga's older sister whom they idolize. Later that night, Helga ends up praising her shrine to Arnold and thinking to herself about how that psychologist will never uncover her deepest, darkest secret, her love for Arnold, which again seems to be her primary concern. Helga ends up falling down, and her parents end up seeing her with the Arnold mask on her head.
It was just getting ready for bed.
Oh, okay. Well, sleep well.
Yeesh. What a nut job.
I need a smoothie.
This, to me, foreshadows a lot. Helga having a crush on Arnold is just the tip of the iceberg. In this scene, the real issue implied is her parents. From this scene, it's easy enough to infer that Helga's father is a callous, brash, controlling Neanderthal, and her mother is an alcoholic who probably suffers from severe depression. Helga ends up going to therapy and is very apprehensive at first. She ends up taking control of the session and asking all the questions, which ends up being a good method of getting her to open up and talk about herself more. Dr. Bliss and Helga end up bonding over jump rope and talking more about their personal lives.
They get in fights. This is what they say. Boys are rotten, made out of cotton. Girls are sassy, made from molasses. Boys go to Jupiter to get more stupider. Girls go to college to get more knowledge.
Helga goes on to explain about how Olga is perfect in her parents' eyes and how she's usually overlooked whenever Olga is around. She opens up about how she feels like no one in her house even knows that she exists, how she had to walk to school in the snow with no jacket, and how she had nothing but a can of beans and a spoon packed for lunch because her parents were too busy ignoring her for Olga. Things press onward with the session, and Helga struggles more and more with not mentioning Arnold when Dr. Bliss brings him up directly. Dr. Bliss keeps pushing, but Helga keeps changing the subject, which allows Dr. Bliss the perfect opportunity to bring up Helga's family life again. They end up talking about how lonely it is living life feeling like no one in your house notices you. Helga tells about a time when she was late for school and her mom, who was passed out on the couch, made her lunch for school and packed her a pack of moist towelettes, a single pack of crackers, and some shaving cream. She then tells the story of how when she was really little and she was asking her dad to take her to preschool, but her dad was too preoccupied with listening to Olga play piano to take her.
Makes me proud to be a Pataki.
Hey, who's taking me to preschool?
Yeah, in a minute, Olga.
No, I'm Helga, Dad. Helga.
Whatever. Go play outside, would you?
I'm going to preschool.
What do you know? 1 minute flat.
Which led to Helga as a young child having to walk to school by herself on a stormy and rainy day. She got soaked by cars driving by and even had a big angry dog steal her lunch on the way to school. She ends up telling Dr. Bliss about how there was one person who always noticed her as a kid, and that was Arnold. He shared his umbrella with her in the rain, complimented her bow, and even offered his crackers when Harold stole hers. But as a result of her having a crush on him, everyone made fun of her, which in turn made Helga into an angry person who bullied all of the other kids. Then finally, Helga admits what she's been too scared to tell anyone. She finally tells the psychiatrist that she is in love with Arnold, which Dr. Bliss responds to by validating her feelings. She tells Helga that it's okay to be in love with him and keep it a secret as long as she isn't hurting anyone, which leads to Helga leaving her appointment seeing life in a new light. She is still mean to Arnold in an effort to hide her secret, but she is nice to Brainy for the first time and tries in the nicest way possible to tell him to stop being so weird. As a parent who loves both of my children equally, it's hard for me to watch this episode nowadays. I can't imagine ever treating my daughter the way that Bob and Miriam treat Helga. Adult or child, there's a lot you can take away from this episode. You should always be respectful of others, and if you're a parent, make sure that your child feels noticed and that they know just how much you love them. Number 1. The Journal. This episode was the final episode made for TV, so naturally, they just had to do it to you. They just had to hit you right in the heart with this one. The episode starts with Arnold on a ship with his parents, when all of a sudden the ship is attacked by pirates and Arnold's parents go to fight the pirates. His parents end up destroying the attacking pirate ship, but are lost in the wreckage, leaving Arnold alone on his ship, begging for them to come back. Suddenly, Arnold jolts awake. He looks over to see his calendar, which is on the date October the 5th. He pulls out a picture of his parents as Grandpa Phil comes in to bring Arnold breakfast in bed. His demeanor seems to reflect that he expects Arnold to be in a bad headspace today. We next see Arnold sitting by himself on his stoop. It's a dark, gloomy, and rainy day. All of his friends walk by and invite him to go to Dino Land for half-price day, but he says he just wants to stay home today. As everyone leaves, he explains to Gerald that it's the anniversary of the day that his parents left and never came back.
It's just that I want to be by myself today, that's all.
You sure you don't want some company?
No thanks. Go on, Gerald. Have fun at Dino Land. Ride one for me, okay?
Okay. Catch you later, Arnold.
Arnold spends the day lamenting the fact that he doesn't know if his parents will ever come back. He gets angry and decides to pack up all the stuff he has from his parents and put it away in the attic so he never has to think about them again. When putting it all away, he stumbles upon a mysterious journal in the attic that turns out to be his dad's journal. Arnold and his grandparents decide to sit down and read the journal as a family. The journal is a documentation of Arnold's dad's time in San Lorenzo in South America, beginning with the time when he met Arnold's mom, Stella. They quickly fell in love and began adventuring in San Lorenzo together. They end up in a bad situation where they were caught in the current of a river which was flowing towards a waterfall hundreds of feet in the air.
Stella!
Miles!
I love you!
As they fall down the waterfall, they're caught and rescued by a mysterious and unknown person that they could only identify as a member of the Green Eyes, an ancient civilization that is very mysterious and lives in seclusion from the rest of society. Arnold's parents, Miles and Stella, want to repay the Green Eyes for saving them, and they're told about a group of pirates that stole a precious artifact from the Green Eyes. To repay them, Miles and Stella track down the pirates and take the ancient artifact back, with intentions of returning it to the Green Eyes. Upon returning the ancient artifact to them, the Green Eyes were so grateful that they had accepted Miles and Stella as members of their family. The story continues on with the next entry in the journal being when Miles and Stella got married. On the day of their wedding, there was a massive earthquake, but they didn't let that ruin their day. Also, the Green Eyes were kind enough to give them a wedding gift, a piglet they would name Abner and decide to keep as a pet. From there, they end up going on their honeymoon in Rio de Janeiro, where they end up saving a group of people trapped in a broken cable car. They end up getting hurt themselves in the process, though. Miles specifically takes almost all of the injury in the accident. While they're still on their honeymoon, Miles' friend Eduardo comes to find them with a letter from the Green Eyes. They've been plagued with a mysterious illness that's wiping out a significant portion of their population. The only people they trust in the outside world are Miles and Stella, so they call on them to save their people. They end up jumping through some serious hoops, and they spend days on end working on a serum for the sickness plaguing the Green Eyes. Stella finally gets the serum stable and delivers it to the Green Eyes, and as Miles and Eduardo are toasting to celebrate Stella, she immediately feels ill. They take her to the emergency clinic in San Lorenzo and find out that she is pregnant and dealing with morning sickness. Many months pass, and the day finally comes that Stella goes into labor. Eduardo and Miles end up putting her on a handmade stretcher and attempting to walk her all the way to the nearest hospital. On the way, they come across a gigantic volcano that just so happens to be erupting at the exact time they're trying to get past it, and the lava flowing ends up trapping them. They come across a temple belonging to the Green Eyes, who left a small bed with a few supplies for Miles and Stella to deliver their baby. And in the middle of the jungle with a volcano erupting in the background, Arnold was born. They struggle to raise Arnold amongst the dangers of the jungle, and they decide to move back to the United States and back into the boarding house with Arnold's grandparents. We get a touching glimpse into Arnold's early childhood, living in the house with his parents and grandparents. We get to see Arnold's first birthday, and Miles and Stella taking him to the park and seeing all the other kids that would end up being Arnold's friends and classmates. The last few pages of the journal are where things really start to pull on your heartstrings and open up some old familiar wounds.
I love every day of our lives together. I'm looking forward to living near my mom and dad and watching Arnold grow and learn more and more. I feel so lucky. I would do anything in the world for my lovely Stella and for our dear little son, Arnold.
The final page is a retelling of the familiar story, the day that Eduardo came and told him about the sickness that's plaguing the Green Eyes once again. This time, a lot more deadly than before. Miles and Stella feel like they owe it to the Green Eyes after how much they've done for them and how they were there for them on the day Arnold was born.
I really don't want to leave, Arnold, but our trip back to San Lorenzo will be quick. Mom and Dad can look after him. Before we know it, we'll be back playing with our boy. I know that the whole time we're there, we'll both miss our Arnold terribly.
After reading the last page of the journal with them, Arnold thanks his grandma and grandpa for everything and says he's gonna go outside and sit on the stoop. While he's out there flipping through the journal, he finds a page that they missed before, which is a map of the area where they were going to on their final trip to San Lorenzo. There's a lot to unpack in this episode. Any episode involving Arnold's parents really just hits hard in my opinion, but one of the saddest parts of the episode, to me at least, is the ending. The amount of foreshadowing the creator of the show put in here is absolutely heartbreaking. It's obvious that he wanted to continue the story in a direction that involved Arnold going to San Lorenzo, and it's sad that the series didn't get the green light to go in that direction and let him resolve the main plot line until 15 years after this episode aired. If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you. If you enjoyed the video, please drop a like and leave a comment letting me know what you think, and please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already because it helps me a ton. I will see you in the next one. Have a good day.